Larry Bird's playing style while he's still in high school. What was his playing style like? Like you said, those first couple years, and then how did it change in his senior year? Like, what were the different qualities in his game specifically?
So he played, and this is Indiana.
Yep.
And so everybody's good. Everybody's fundamentally good. Uh, if you're playing on any level and you're starting or on the traveling team, you've got decent skills. And Larry was a good player with a lot of other good players. His eighth grade year, and I went back through, I found some of the old box scores and articles in the newspapers when Larry was an eighth grader. I had their scorebook for his eighth grade year, and then I had some things from his freshman and sophomore year that I found in the paper. So in his eighth grade year, he gets kicked off the team about the second half of the season, and I wondered what that was about. And I looked at the score book, and I kind of figured what it was. But anyway, Larry was very frustrated. The Bird boys were famous for having tempers, and he would get mad and cuss and throw the ball down and holler at the refs. But he skipped practice, and that got him kicked off his eighth grade year. His freshman year, he came back and he played some, and even when you look at the seventh and eighth grade scoring of the few articles I could see, he was usually the leading scorer. Uh, and then in his freshman year, he says he didn't play that much. He may have lost out missing that eighth grade part. So the beginning of his sophomore year, he broke his ankle.
Hmm.
So he wasn't even playing. And then he got put into a varsity game at the end of the season after he was able to play a couple of junior varsity games. So that gets us to his junior year. By his junior year, he's perfected his shot, but he's not shooting a lot. The big scorer is Steve Land. In those first 5 or 6 games against really tough competition, uh, Springs Valley won all their games and close games against teams that were starting out. Most of them were having their best teams ever. And so Springs Valley really had a good team, and it was senior led with Steve Land and Danny King and Tony Clark. And then there was a freshman on it named Brad Bledsoe who had started as a freshman when Larry was a sophomore. So Larry wasn't, he was in the mix, but he wasn't anywhere near where he's at. I remember in reading newspaper articles about the beginning of his junior year, he's the last guy they talk about out of 13 guys that are going to play,
Oh,
if
wow.
that gives you any sense, because he just didn't have, nobody knew. And so somewhere along the line, I think Jim Jones saw his potential and he said, Larry, you need to shoot more. That was after the Jasper game, according to Larry. And Jasper was a big rival to the Larry Bird's high school team. And so he started shooting, but he was also passing. And so in looking at the old newspapers, all you see is land this, land that. But where you see Larry mentioned is in his passing. You
Hmm.
start seeing sports writers say, wow, I've never seen that passing is really good. And so he's a ball handler. He can shoot and he can pass. And he's 6'1" and he's become 6'3" and now he's maybe weighing 150 pounds. I would say that Larry, the last half of the second half of the season, Larry was becoming Larry Bird, but he
Yep.
was a 6'3" Larry Bird. And I think Jim Jones, that's how Jim Jones remembers Larry as being full-fledged Larry. I've just started thinking about this, Kyle, and I don't think anybody's ever caught it. But people that talk about Larry uh, in the present and they look back at the past of when he was in high school and when he was in Indiana State will say something like, wow, he was there at that moment, but he wasn't. Jim Jones speaks of him his junior year as being like that. We go through the box scores. No, nobody's talking about him. I mean, you can see toward the end of the season, he starts being one of the leading scorers, but he's still not the leading scorer. So people project from the future to the past on Larry
Of course.
because he becomes, I guess it's like Abe Lincoln. I'm sure Abe Lincoln didn't know what he was doing at some point in time. And yet everybody had stories about him at some point in time, like he was out of the womb like that.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it was a process, and I think his junior year you begin seeing it. But I'm back to Jim Jones. if Jim Jones had seen that the way he claimed he saw it, he would not have quit. He would have wanted that ride, right?
Yeah, of course.
He would have wanted that ride. And so he quits coaching. He's the athletic director. And the next guy, Gary Holland told me this story. Gary Holland said when Jim announced his retirement at the end of Larry's junior year, he said he came up to, he told all the coaches, he said, I'm not going to be coaching. He said, Gary, you're probably going to be the coach. And then Gary said, Jim Jones walked up to me and put his hand on my chest and whispered in my ear. He didn't want to mess with him. That Larry and the guys that he was with were kind of the poor people in town, and they had a rough edge, and they liked, the party and fight and things of that. Not in a really bad way, but in a way that would bother a strict disciplinarian like Jim Jones. And of course, Gary Holland was just perfect for that.
Yeah, see.
But
Go ahead.
But another thing to that, so at the beginning of Larry's senior year, he's 6'7", but nobody's picking them to win over half their games. And so I don't think anybody knows Larry Bird yet. It's going to be Larry Bird, but you start seeing that by you see it real quick in his scoring. But what really turns things around, I think, is their fifth game against Jasper again. And Larry just became Larry Bird that night, and he stayed that way the rest of the time. If you had to pick a moment, that was the moment when Larry and everybody realized, wow, yeah. I'm this way, and I'm going to keep being this way. I remember talking to a player that played against Larry that guarded him his junior year when Larry was between 6'1" and 6'3", and he kept Larry from scoring. So now the same kid scoring against or guarding Larry when he's 6'7", and his comment to me when he's telling me the story, he said, "Well, nobody could stop him in the NBA, and I couldn't." It wasn't possible by that time either. At that point in time.
If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookupapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.